Hello, and welcome back to Intro to Computer Science Programming with Java. My name's Andrew Perkins, and in this lesson, we're going to learn about the different types of errors that you might run into while developing with Java. Now, having some type of error pop up while you're programming is inevitable, whether you're a beginner or even an experienced developer. So even once you know how to use a language, no matter how hard you try, as your programs get larger, you're eventually going to mess something up. And knowing how to identify what kind of error you have, where it's at, and how to fix it is essential. So the easiest way to learn about errors is to just simply make a programming mistake on purpose, try to compile the application, and see what happens. And this is exactly what we're going to do here. Now, in the Intro to Java lesson, we created our first class and main method to print out the words Hello World. So let's use that existing code to work with errors. I'm going to switch into Eclipse, and as you can see, I already have the Intro to CS Java project open, as well as the helloworld.java file. Now, the first type of error I'd like to discuss is a syntax error, also called a compile time error. This type of error happens when you as the developer have made an error in the code that you've written by perhaps not closing a bracket or parenthesis, or not closing a quote, or not ending your statements with a semicolon, for example, and then the compiler is going to complain and give you an error. So let's try this out. I'm going to remove the ending double quote from our hello world string. We'll save the file, and let's compile it and run it. So we can right-click and choose to run as Java application. And you can see we get a pop-up here saying that we have errors. Do we want to proceed? I'm going to say yes, proceed. And our console opens up. And as you can see, we have an unresolved compilation problem. And then here's the description saying string literal is not properly closed by a double quote. And it tells us the name of the class as well as the method where the error occurred, and the name of the file, and the line number where the compiler thinks the error occurred. Now, this line number isn't always correct, but the error is usually always nearby, so it's still a good reference. Now, we can't actually see line numbers for our file, so let's turn those on. We can right-click in this little gray spot here and choose to show line numbers. So now we can see here's line 4, and this is where we remove the double quote. So in this case, it is telling us the correct location for the error. Now you can also click the line number here, and that'll highlight the line where the error is at. Now, Eclipse is pretty smart, and will often give you a hint that you've made an error before you even make it to compiling your program. If you look next to the line where we removed the double quote, you can see that we have this X. And if you hover on it, it'll give you a little tip of what the error might be. Now, this visual cue can be pretty helpful, and it can save you some time from having to compile multiple times to fix these compile time errors. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this. We'll just put the double quote back in here. We'll save the file, and let's run it just to make sure that it's working again. We can also run by clicking this little green arrow at the top, and there we go, we get Hello World in the console. Now, there is a second type of error that you might run into, and this is a logic error, also called a runtime error. The compiler doesn't tell you about these types of errors because your code is correct according to the compiler. A runtime error is an error that occurs when your application doesn't work as you intended it to work. Most of the time, the only clue that you'll have is that your program just isn't working the way you wanted it to. So let's change our method here to, instead of printing out Hello World, let's have it print out what 1 plus 1 equals. So we'll use 1 plus 1 equals 3. Now, this isn't actually going to do any math. It's just going to display the string of numbers and characters in the console. So let's save our file, and let's run our program. And as you can see, it compiles just fine. We don't get any errors. And in the console, we see 1 plus 1 equals 3. But we know that that isn't correct. 1 plus 1 equals 2. And this is what a runtime error is. We expect our program to do one thing, and when we run it, it actually does something else. And now lastly, there is another type of runtime error that you may run into, and these are called exceptions, which come from the Java Virtual Machine, which is used to run your Java programs on your computer. So to give you an example of an exception, we can adjust what we're displaying here in the console, and instead of just printing out a string, we'll do a little math. So let's remove the string, including the double quotes, and let's enter in a mathematical statement. Let's divide the number 5 by 0. So to do division, you can enter in a number and then put a / and then another number. So that's going to divide 5 by 0. Let's save our file and let's run the program. And now we can see that we have an exception error here. This is an arithmetic exception, and it's saying that we can't divide by 0. Now this is not a compile time error. This is still a runtime error. This is happening at runtime when the program tries to run, and this is just letting us know that there's been an exception that you can't divide by 0. And that's about it for learning the different types of errors that you'll run into while programming. Of course, depending on the error, your error messages will be different, but you can use Eclipse's features to spot errors and use the compiler to help you fix them. Now, don't worry if you happen to make a lot of errors when you're starting out. Having errors is a great way to learn. But that's it for this video. Next up, we'll be moving into Section 2 to learn the basics of programming with Java, and I'll see you in the next lesson.